Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Authentic and Unaltered. Here with me for my ninth installment is the Drew of Vintage Legacy. Hello, Drew.
Hey, how are you tonight, John?
I'm doing great. Thanks
Good,
for
good.
joining me tonight.
Absolutely.
Here we're here to talk about your favorite subject, you. So I'll,
Okay.
I'll have lots of questions for you. You have any opening statements for the crowd?
Not really. I appreciate you having me on. I know, we had tried to line this up a while ago, but just scheduling conflicts, East Coast, West Coast thing. But I'm glad we finally got a time, and I've been looking forward to this. So, um, yeah, I think it's great, and I do appreciate you having me on.
Well, it's great to have you. I've been looking forward to it as well. And, sometimes life just gets in the way. So,
Absolutely.
but start things out. I'm looking at, Drew the boy. What sports did you play as a child to start out?
Well, I actually didn't play any organized sports growing up. Very young, we moved around a lot, so we never really sort of landed and planted feet within a community to be able to participate in that stuff. Really, the first sport I ever played was about high school. I started playing church softball in a men's church softball league, which I was young and unexperienced or inexperienced, but I never really played on organized sports. However, I love to play and I love to do stuff, in the neighborhood. A lot of those games, running bases, played that a ton. Um, I don't just different games me and my brother would make up, or my dad would come out and play with me and my brother and or other kids in the neighborhood or whatever. So, but uh, but yeah, I mean, love to do it, love to follow them, but never played on an actual team as a kid. So
So, were there any particular professional teams that was like your team that you decided on, or you just never settled?
yeah, so where I grew up in, I say New Jersey, even though we moved around up in the Northeast a lot. So we landed in New Jersey from where I started really understanding whatever. It was about fourth grade, fifth grade, I guess, and then up in through high school. And up there, baseball is massive and football is massive. And the one thing I knew from a very young kid was baseball was king, and I still agree with that. And you can't like the Yankees. And my dad was a Mets fan, and this is in mid '80s, and the Mets they were up and coming, and they were starting putting the pieces together. They were bringing up young prospects, superstars like Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry, making huge trades for guys like Gary Carter and Keith Hernandez. And it was just a team that gelled. And by the time I was watching them, I really got into it. I've always loved statistics, and that's how I learned about baseball was from the stats on the back of cards. And yeah, so I followed the Mets, and man, I was a huge Mets fan up until college, and then I don't really know what happened. I guess I just had a year where I didn't pay attention to sports much, and when I came back into it about a year later, the Mets were terrible, and the card thing was booming, and I really got into baseball and the history of baseball, and that's when I started studying the history of it and really falling in love with the depth of the history of it, and that's really where I kind of land today. So.
Okay. So, speaking of cards, then, what did you start? What were the first cards you ever collected?
Okay. Well, the first cards I was ever introduced to, they were actually my brothers. In 1978, I was 5, and my brother was 7, and he had an accident, and he was in the hospital for a little bit. And an associate pastor came in and brought a box of baseball cards. Kids like baseball cards. Well, we had never seen it. We didn't have much money growing up, and it wasn't something we had. But he opened these packs, and when he came home, we started looking, and so 1978 Tops was the first cards I'd ever seen. And when I see those, it's very unusual to me because while there's sets that I love, cards I love, or whatever from all eras, 1978 there's like a real deep connection to the design and the pictures. A lot of people don't like it, but for me, that's all we had. And that's really all we had for a few years up until about the mid 80s. And then I started getting into tops and I would buy complete sets at a local flea market. I didn't buy a lot of packs. I remember buying the stickers. If anybody knows about those top sticker books from the mid 80s, I had a lot of those stickers. In the little book, you would put them in and follow the teams.
Yeah, I
But
saw them. I never had any.
Yeah, and so that's how I got into it. And by the late '80s, again, Tops was the thing. Then Upper Deck came out. I was getting into college, and then '91 was when it exploded. Both for myself, I had a little bit more money to buy. I had the freedom because the driver's license to get out to get to card shops. The hobby was everywhere. You couldn't miss it. And I just got into it big time, and that's when I started really getting into all different types of sets and cards and things like that. Not much vintage at that point. In fact, really none. Vintage to me was like something that I could never afford. I would get to Beckett and I would look and I'd be like, these cards are worth hundreds of dollars, and I was hoping for a $4 Nolan Ryan card or something. And so it never dawned on me that a lower conditioned card would not be hundreds of dollars. And so I just never got into vintage because I never thought I could until really the late '90s, and then that's when everything switched, and I haven't gone back to modern at all. So,
So did you ever even have a gap of not collecting then, really?
uh, I had yeah, I guess about '95 till about '99, and it was just life was
Oh,
going on. My son was born, and that was much more important than buying packs or getting cards. But I was still very big into baseball and knew exactly all the players and everything going on. And then in '99, something very specific happened in my life, and I thought I need to get rid of these cards, and because I didn't think I would do anything else with them, and instead I got rid of most of my junk wax stuff except for key cards or my Griffies, let's say, and then I don't know. It's a long story. I don't have to get into it, but I basically I purchased a book, an album of baseball cards, of vintage baseball cards, and they were almost all from the '70s, but they were all the big names. And I never thought I would ever own a Steve Carlton. I would never own a Fergie Jenkins, all that kind of stuff. And and from that point on, coinciding with eBay, all of a sudden I found I could find these old cards, guys that I never thought I could have, like Yogi Berra or Stan Musial or Ted Williams, and you could get them relatively cheap. Beckett didn't mean that's what the price tag for all of them were. I started realizing condition differences were relative to pricing. And I just never thought about that at that point. A card was a card no matter what. If Beckett said it was worth 20 bucks, well, that's what it was. It was 20 bucks. It didn't matter about a dinged corner or off centered. So,
oh yeah. I mean, I remember going to a shop in those days, and no matter what condition a card was in, they'd sell it for the top
oh,
dollar.
yeah. 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 And you thought you were getting a deal if you got, 80% of high book and all this other stuff. But anyway, so there was a little bit of a gap, 4 or 5 years of collecting, actively collecting, but I was still very much into the game of baseball, and of course my history study or whatever. Read a lot of books, about old stuff, and really got into that. Um, so it was a natural switch for me to kind of get over into vintage.
Well, that's great. I mean, when you did is an amazing time versus myself with a 30-year gap. So,
Yeah, no, I never had that, but yeah, and I fortunately, I got a lot of cards. I mean, I get a lot of comments on my videos about you have an amazing collection, and I look and I'm like, I've had these for so long. I don't know. Like I know what I paid for a lot of the cards, and I'm just shocked now at what prices have become because I haven't been paying attention to purchasing anything. So that's kind of it's kind of funny to me. That's all.
oh
As
yeah.
everything exploded. So
And I mean, as far as your vintage collection, you mentioned the '70s, but then, I mean, ultimately, where did it all branch from there?
okay, so the first thing I started to do when I discovered eBay and the fact that you could purchase cards for less than what books said was I thought I want to put a vintage set together. I just thought that would be the coolest thing to actually build an entire vintage set. I didn't know anything about specific sets. I'd seen cards, but like I would see a card and I'd have to study to say, okay, what year was this from? I didn't know it automatically. So it's funny now, but I was looking through different sets and I thought I want to do a '50s set. Um, So I was looking through, and remember my disdain for the Yankees, okay?
Yeah.
And the fact that Mickey Mantle cards were so insanely overpriced compared to everything else, or at least in my opinion. So what I did was I started looking at sets, and I was like, oh, here's a set. It's not very big, and there's no Mickey Mantle in it. So I picked
Sure.
1955 tops. So that was the very first. I mean, outside of hand picking a few cards here and there, and I had already picked a few. I just wanted vintage cards of star players. Well, I already had purchased uh, Yogi Berra and a Ted Williams. Well, I'm like, well, there's two big ones right now. Yeah, I'll have to get that Clemente at some point, but whatever.
Yeah.
And so I started picking away. I found a lot, of commons and this and that, and I just started plugging away at it, and I ended up completing the set. And so that was my real big thing into it. And then after that, I decided along the way I'd picked up a few key players, Hall of Famers, and I decided I was going to go after um, a playing days card from every Hall of Famer from 1909 on, and that was a big one. But I had picked up a Lou Gehrig along the way, so I thought, okay, well he's out of the way. I've just got to get some other guys like Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb, which now seems insane, but so
Yeah.
I started looking, and what I found was type collecting at that point, and I started picking up all different types of cards and sets and things I'd never heard, and I was like a sponge. I was just absorbing all this information, and I ended up completing that. Now that took a long time to complete my Hall of Fame run, but I had it, and then after I was done with it, it's kind of like the 55 set. I was like, well, now what do I do? And I ended up selling off almost all those Hall of Famers. Not all of them. I still have 5 pre-war Hall of Fame cards that I kept, but I sold them off, and I actually used the money to take my wife on a trip for her birthday, and no regrets with that. And I've built a few sets since then. I built a 52 Bowman set. I love that set because I wanted an older mantle, and I couldn't get the tops or the 51 Bowman. So I built that set, and then I ended up selling it, most of it, to Jake. Actually, when he talks about he completed the 52, well, I completed the 52. He just purchased most of it from me, but it's all okay. And I've completed a few more sets, but I haven't sold any more off. I did sell off a big chunk of my collection a few years ago because I just downsized and I realized I was accumulating and I wasn't specific. And that's kind of where I landed on what I have now. So I'm very happy with what I have. Every card has a story, and I can tell you where I got each one, most of them, what I paid for them. And I don't have a ton of cards in collecting, but I've gained so much in experience and people along the way. So that's kind of my start to end story on where I've gotten to today. So,
Yeah. One of the videos I watched of yours here recently, speaking of that 55 set,
mhm.
uh, most people don't go back in people's catalogs and watch things.
Yeah,
Uh, you want to share your getting paid $100 to have
to
a
get my Clemente.
rookie?
Yeah, so back then, eBay was like it was like the Wild West. There was sniping programs hadn't come out yet, so if you wanted, and most items were auctions. There wasn't as many buy it nows. So I thought, I needed to find a Clemente. They were rather expensive for my budget at the time, and I didn't care about condition a whole lot. I just wanted authentic, one that presented well, whatever. And so I was looking for Clemente rookie cards that had been listed, and their time was just an odd time, because if you were going to have it an auction end at 8 p.m., on a Sunday night Eastern Standard Time, there'd be a bidding war. So you had to find these odd ones. And at that point in time, what it would do is when you said list your auction and you hit that button, it was 7 days most of the time from the point you did it. Well, this person listed a 55 Clemente. It was graded a 2. And the ending time was like 3 something in the morning on a Sunday morning. And I thought, this is perfect. And so I'm looking at it and I'm looking through the thing. And in his description, no pictures of it, no pictures whatsoever. But in the description, it says the winner of this card will also receive 8 other Roberto Clemente cards. Well, I didn't know that could be modern reprint. I didn't know. My focus was on that card, and the starting bid on it was $250. I remember that, which was also a mistake. You wanted to start it low to bid up. Well, he
Yeah.
started it higher. I waited and waited. I'm hoping not to fall asleep on myself. I hit the bid last minute, and this was dial up too. So I mean, you had to like time it all out. So there's, so. But anyway, I hit the bid, and I had my max bid of like 275 or so. Well, I was only bidder, $250. Well, I paid him. It comes, and he included 8 other Roberto Clemente cards from his playing days, and I'm like, no way. So I ended up
Yeah.
selling almost all of them. I think I kept one of them. I'm not sure because I've actually reaccumulated all those cards, um, but I sold them all, and I ended up selling them and making more money back than I on those other cards than I did pay for the Clemente rookie. So yeah, my Clemente rookie was basically a gift with some money, and uh, and it was a lot of fun. Now, I probably spent the money I made on other cards, so
Well,
it
sure.
doesn't really matter. But still, that's how I got my Clemente rookie way back, and I still have that card too.
Yeah, still I was fascinated by the fact that you paid 250, but then you sold the free cards for 350.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I remember, and they were so there was not a 56, but I do remember a 57, 58, and 59, and those three bought the most, of course, and then there were some scattered through the 60s, and I think a 73. That was the only one from the 70s. So, and of course, that one usually catches pretty good prices because it was the last card. It's a great image and a beautiful card. So,
yeah, but awesome. But back to your collecting and your reduction. I heard you mention about like 100 item as a goal. So what,
yeah,
you want to talk about that one?
uncollecting my collection. Yeah, so without getting too long-winded, a few years ago, something happened within our family, and it really put me on alert of what happens to me. Everything's fine now, but what happens if something happens to me? My kids, my wife, while they support me and appreciate that I love this, they don't understand this. And what my collection, I didn't want it to become a burden to them if something happened to me. And that started to bother me. I talked to somebody else about it, and I thought, you know what, there's so much stuff that I have that I never look at. It was about getting it, but it wasn't about appreciating it. I have this card from this year, but then it would go into a box. And anybody familiar with me or my channel know I'm all about display. Everything is display. I mean, even behind me here, it's just display.
Yeah.
And if it's just going to sit in a box or in a safety deposit box or whatever, to me that wasn't the fun of collecting. When cards or autographs or whatever, they're meant to be looked at and viewed. And exactly, and you do a great job with it. Beautiful. But that's my thing is I want to see it. And so what I did was I sold a massive chunk of my collection off, and in this process, I started to think, you know what, I wanted to challenge myself if I could get down to 100 cards. Now, it's not actually 100. The reason it's 100 is I have cases. They're larger than the ones that are behind you. Each case holds about 40 cards in it, and I have three of them. I made all of them, so that's 120. Depending if you turn them, any of them horizontal, that takes up space and stuff. So I said 100, but it's give or take. And what it was is if I can't fit it in the case, if I have to put it in storage, I don't want to have it. And so that's kind of where that came from. And that way, if something does happen to me, um, it's easier for my family to be able to take care of it and understand exactly what things are. Um, so now what it is if there's a card that I really want and I'm like, I really want to go after this card, I have to know before I get that card and go to one of my cases and say, which card is coming out of my case to make room for this card. And I still have, probably 10 or 15 cards that I'd be like, yeah, I'll take that out. Like one of them, because I'm a Hall of Fame player, I have a Trevor Hoffman rookie card. Nothing wrong with Trevor Hoffman, but there's a card I'm making the deal for. I haven't talked about it yet. From the 50s, from another great Hall of Famer, I will take Trevor Hoffman out to put that card in, that kind of a thing. But
Sure.
there's going to get to a point, if I continue this, I'm going to run out of quote unquote Trevor Hoffman rookie cards to take out. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where it is. That's what it. Now that doesn't include everything I have. I have my complete sets, and I have a few player runs, certain players that I collect. But that's what the 100. When I talk about the 100 cards, that's what I'm talking about. And I haven't actually ever shown those on my channel. Each individual, what makes up the 100 at this point. But that's what it's referring to.
Okay. Yeah. So like that awesome Griffey case, that's not part of the
That's
count.
not part of it. No,
Yeah.
but man, I love that case. Now that's a display case.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, I was amazed when you told the story of getting that for like 120
100,
bucks.
yeah, 120, I think it was. Yeah, and then he threw all the cards in that were in it. And they weren't great, but I probably sold and got 40 or 50 bucks for the cards that were in it. But that was that was fabulous. So that's the only case. Yeah, that's the only case in my room that I didn't actually personally make. But I would like to duplicate that and make another one just to see if I can do it. But we'll see. I don't know.
Okay. But yeah, the other fascinating item part of your collection that I saw there was involving something from the earth.
Oh yeah, my collection. Yeah, that's the only time I got clickbaity, but I just wanted to see if it would work. So, um, but yeah, I have a dirt collection. In fact, it's right next to me here, somewhere. Oh, there they are.
I was
Yeah.
wondering how extensive that is now. How many different locations?
Let me look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. But I know I have one more. I just haven't put it in display. So eight stadiums. And for those who don't know, I try to any stadium I go to, I try to get dirt from the infield. It's the stupidest, greatest souvenir ever. And really, what makes it so fun is not that I achieve it. It's the planning that goes out of how are we going to do it? Because there is some stadium security that doesn't care and they look at you like you're crazy. They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
man, it's dirt, go ahead. But other people, I mean, it's like sacred ground. And
Oh yeah, Wrigley Field
the
story.
Wrigley, yeah, they were not too happy at all. So that's one of my prides is the fact that I have some Wrigley dirt, because that one and Baltimore are the two stories I think we told in that video we did. But yeah,
Yeah.
Wrigley, they're serious about keeping their dirt, really. But good stuff. So.
Yeah, that it's the first time I've heard of a dirt collection. So
Well, it's just what had happened. I think I told it, but a friend of mine, and at the time he was a young man. He had graduated high school, and for his high school graduation trip, he's a huge baseball fan. He went on a road trip with his brother and a friend. I think it was a brother and a friend, and they went to a couple different stadiums up the East Coast. He's a big Yankee fan or whatever. Well, he was taking a stadium tour, and he's like, "I got to get Yankee Stadium dirt." So he snuck some, and then later he was in Boston at Fenway, did the same thing, and he got some. And he's like so excited. He was like 18 at the time, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I got some dirt from it." And he's like, "Who else would like this dirt? Drew would like this dirt." And so he brought it back for me and gave it to me, and I was so happy. Well, that just started us trying to find this dirt, and it's funny, the that young man is now not a young man, he's older, he's in his 30s, and he actually works at the same place I work. And I talked to him the other day. I started this series on friends in the hobby, and I said, "Hey, you want to come on my channel sometime and talk about some of your stories, because he's got some really good stories about things he's collected over the years." So hopefully I'll be able to get him on in I don't know, a few weeks or a month or so, and we can share the story of the dirt and how it started with him. So we'll see how it goes.
yeah, talking about your channel, I mean, that is one of the things that like folks like myself got into YouTube because we don't have hobby friends anywhere.
Yeah.
And you've got some great stories through the years here with some of your hobby friends.
Hmm.
Uh, Anything in particular stand out there that you want to share,
As far as the friends of the hobby,
or just
um, I mean, if you look back, the I did a video last week about he's one of my oldest friends, and he and I went to college together. He's a huge baseball fan, and we collected back in the early '90s during college because everybody collected. But we were friends not because of baseball and not because of collecting. We were friends because we were friends, and he and I have remained great friends still to this day. And but we had that little tiny bit of our friendship, which was collecting and some hobby stories. And so I did that video, and then another one. I did a series of videos with a friend named Alan, the guy we talked about the dirt with, and Alan and I have been friends for 20 something years. We worked together, which is how we became good friends. And he and I did that whole eBay is new thing at the same time, where we both collected, him basketball and me baseball. And so the thing about the thread of all of these friends are, until YouTube, I never had any friends because of the hobby. I had friends that also had it as a hobby, if that makes any sense. Like we became friends because we're just friends, and and then as the relationship developed, we found this common thread of collecting or baseball or something. And some of those stories are great because they're personal. They're personal to me. They're personal to them, and it's just a lot of fun recounting them and retelling them. So that's kind of where that is.
Well, cool. Uh, so, speaking of some of your big collection items, I know I've seen the Koufax case, the Clemente case, the Pee Wee Reese.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you haven't really shown us?
I haven't done a whole highlight on my Stan Musial stuff. Um, Probably because I don't have anything highly unique in the Stan Musial, except that I have them. Like some of those cards have gone up astronomically, like the 49 Leaf or his 48 Bowman rookie. So I have those, but everybody's kind of seen them. My Pee Wee Reese, I have a lot of the more oddball kind of food issues, and that's a lot of fun. And then Carl Erskine is my big sort of PC guy that's not in the Hall of Fame. But there's a different connection I had with him that started through TTM. I had a phase of TTM and through the mail autographs, and he was actually the first person that ever responded to me and sent me back an autograph. And I don't know, there was just this whole series of correspondence between me and him, to where I was like, and the more I read about him as a player and as a person, the more I really liked him. And there's just so much about him that's so interesting. He's not in the Hall of Fame. He never will be, but he's just fascinating as a person for some of the things that he's gone through in life outside of baseball, as well as within baseball. So
you're saying he became basically pen pals with Carl Erskine then?
a little bit, yeah. Like to the point to where, so I told you I pulled some stuff out, and if you want, I'll show you this. So this was the very first letter that I wrote. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what I would do when I would do through the mail was I would write a general statement. I'd be honored if you consider signing whatever, whatever. And then I said, if you don't mind, I have a few questions. Now I did this for every player, and I would write a few questions. Some of them would answer them, some of them would not. Again, Carl Erskine was the first person that I got it back. He answered my question in full sentences, which was a lot. And then he signed my letter, and he dated it 12. I'll show it up here. The date is 2012, December 2012. Wrote it, and then he signed my 52 Bowman. And it's kind of hard. I probably picked the wrong card, but he signed it. Not only his name, but over in the side it says 1955 World Series champs. And again, I'm a Yankee hater, so the fact that the Brooklyn Dodgers beat them in their one time that they actually triumphed, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Anyway, so I had written to him, and I appreciated that. And I was getting other through the mails, and I thought, you know what, I want to I would love to get him on a baseball. So what I did was I sent him a baseball, except this time I actually sent him some money. And I told him about myself a little bit more and told him that, I on the side, I taught youth group at a church, and I was really big into the youth community, all this other stuff. And I sent him a donation of, I think it was $10. And I sent him a baseball, and I said, "Would you be willing to sign this baseball? You already gave me a free one. I want to, give you some money for this." He sent the ball back. Now I have the ball. I stuck it up here because I knew I'd get it. And not only did he sign the baseball, I'm going to pull this out and look. He did what's called a stat ball. And a stat ball, he signed it, and then he pitched two no hitters in his career, and he put one there and the other there, and then he wrote 1950 underneath his autograph, 1955 World Series champions, and then he wrote his stat. He was a league leader in 1953, 20-6 record, and then he wrote all the World Series that he appeared in, which was 1949, 52, 53, 55, 56, and 59. And if you look, he underlined 55 and 59 because those are the two that they won,
Yeah.
one in Brooklyn, one in Los Angeles. Not only did he do that, he also wrote back a letter, which I'm not going to bring out for a couple personal reasons, but he said, "Drew, thank you so much for doing this." And he sent back the $10. And he said, "I want you to donate this $10 to your youth group." And I thought, how classy is that? I mean, he didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? But he did that. So just through a couple of different things, I wrote him a thank you note, and I wasn't asking for anything back. I just said, "Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that." And that was it, a thank you note. Well, then he wrote me back, "Absolutely, Drew. It's great to have a fan." Now, his letters were not like pages long, but there was a few correspondence where I would thank him and he would respond by writing me back. Now, remember, when I did that, I didn't do TTM. I didn't send him an envelope with a stamp on it. He actually addressed it and stamped it and sent it back. And I've never shown those items. I don't think I ever will, only because there was some stuff. There's some personal stuff in there between that I told him because of some similarities in his life and mine, and it's just personal. So, but I just thought how cool. So the last time I wrote him, I decided I wanted a 100% completely unique piece, something that nobody else in the world had. So I had to think about this. How am I going to do this? Because I have, these letters and I've got the autograph ball and the card and such. Well, for those of you who don't know, in 1953, the Dodgers faced off against the Yankees in the World Series. And Carl Erskine pitched one of those games and he struck out 14 batters. I think it's 14, yeah, which at the time was a World Series record. Now that's since been beaten, and now Bob Gibson holds the record at 17, I believe.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was a big deal, 14 that he struck out. And I thought, you know what? I really put some time into this. So what I did was I found an original photograph of him pitching. And for anybody who knows, in the 50s, most photographs were staged. I mean, when you look at the players or the pictures or cards or whatever, they're posed or pre-posed. But this was an actual in-game photograph of him pitching. And it was a black and white 8x10. And I sent it to him and I said, "I don't want to ask for anything else, but if you would do this for me, I would appreciate it." And what I did was I said, "Would you sign your name, sign, 1953, 14 strikeouts against the Yankees, and then something specific?" And I actually had photocopied the picture and wrote exactly what I would like if it was okay with him. Well, he wrote me back and he did exactly what I asked, and I'll show the item in a second. And he said, "Drew, this is a great idea. Nobody has ever asked for this. I think this is great." And I thought, I have a one of one. I've created this one of one. So I'm very excited about it. So what it is the photograph, and it's in a frame along with some other stuff. But what he did was he actually wrote all 14 of the strikeout victims, if you can see it without the glare, up above it.
Well, let me give you a solo screen here
All right.
so we can see this better.
There you go. So he listed them in order the names, the strikeout victims, and for all you big Yankee fans out there, I want you to notice M. Mantle is 4 times. He struck out Mickey Mantle 4 times in that game. Also struck out Johnny Mize, and there was another Hall of Famer too. Was it Rizzuto? I don't remember. But yeah, 14 strikeouts, and you can see down there where he signed it and wrote that on that great picture. And then I was able to find, put it over here. Oops, wrong one. An actual stub from the World Series game, from that game.
Awesome.
And in 1961, Baseball Scoops, I love that set, they put out a card talking about him striking out 14. And along the way, I also found this where somebody had written him and said, you struck out, all these batters. Who was the hardest and why? And he said the 14th was Johnny Mize, one of the best hitters in baseball. Also, he had hit me hard in other games, Carl Erskine, number 17. So there's the display. One of my favorite things. And there it is. So, yep, I love that piece. It's got a great story to me. I have not written him back since. I felt that I didn't want to abuse any kind of anything. And Carl Erskine is still alive. He's 96, I think, or I mean, he started playing the year after Jackie Robinson, and he wrote a book called "What I Learned from Jackie Robinson." And he is from Indiana, and he saw a lot of the stuff that Robinson went through. Well, he never understood why people would care about someone of color, like they were still a person to him. But he saw how Jackie Robinson carried himself and how he responded and had restraint and was still um, heads and shoulders above everybody else as a player and as a person. And that meant a lot to Carl Erskine, to watch this other player go through all this stuff when he was just a skinny white kid from Indiana and he never saw racism before. So I just love it. I love Carl Erskine. I love his stuff. I've got all his cards and and I don't know. To me, it's just a great story. The whole community within Brooklyn, they called him Oisk. I love that, and he's just this bridge between. So there you go. There's my Carl Erskine, or some of it at least. So
Well, it's an amazing display piece. So,
thank you. I appreciate that.
um, moving on more. So you've been in YouTube now for 11 months,
Mm-hmm.
from what I saw there. And any particular things stand out for you? Any stories pertaining to your YouTube experience that have come across here?
Stories within YouTube. I mean, generally, and everybody I've talked to that has a channel, in fact, you and I mentioned this before we started recording. This community is unparalleled. I've been around other communities with other things, and I've never seen such acceptance, lack of ridicule. If you go on, so for instance, I do woodworking on the side, and so I watch a lot of woodworking videos, and so there's this woodworking community, but a lot of those, there's a lot of like naysayers. Oh, you're doing this wrong, and you should try this, and there's all this negativity seated within all the positive comments. And I don't see that. I've never had a negative comment. Every once in a while, we'll get somebody will say, "Oh, I got my first negative comment," but this is out of hundreds or thousands of comments. And, for the most part, the community has just been overwhelmingly accepting to anybody. In if I see somebody and they're all into the super shiny new stuff, I don't ridicule them. Good for them. If they love that stuff, that's their thing, and good for them. If
Yeah.
somebody's not into baseball and they love another sport, great. I have no problem with that. And people don't care about my stuff being. I've never had anybody say, "What's wrong with you? You don't have graded cards," or "Why do you have all such low condition cards?" Nobody said that to me. If I get a low condition card, I'll show one because there happens to be one sitting here. There's a 54 Yogi Berra in not great shape, and You know, no one's like, how do you even look at that thing? The corners are all, they're not corners anymore, you know, um, or whatever. There's my shout out to Joe, but you know, and actually there's a little water stain on that thing, and I don't care. It's still a 54 Barrett to me, but to other people. So that's my first thing is the community has just been fantastic. Um, you know, as far as a story within, the only thing I can think of that I think is it's kind of funny now is, you know, when you first get into it, there's always a few people that you consider big. They've been around for a while. They've got hundreds of subscribers or even 1,000 or whatever number is big in your mind. And you're sort of not in awe of them, but you're kind of hoping maybe they'll notice your little channel that you're trying to do. And one of those people that had come along or that I had seen coming along was I find this funny, but anyway, is Don from Don's Field of Dreams. And you know, I didn't hold him in some awe and regard, but I thought, man, he knows, you know, he knows his stuff. He's got a great collection, and he seems to be a good guy. And and I I made a video. I made it specifically, and I enjoyed this video. In fact, it's one of my favorite videos that I ever did, even though I did it a long time ago, and I have a very few views on it. And it's called a Hall of Famer hiding in plain sight. And it's something I discovered on a baseball card where there's a Hall of Famer sitting right there. And I did all this research, and I was super excited. Well, at the time, Don was doing this other little series about Hall of Famers and other cards from the 70s or whatever. And I thought, oh man, if he could see this thing, I'd be so excited, you know. So I think I commented on one of his videos, and I said, hey, look at this thing if you want. You know, I was wanted a little love from Don, and Don's like, he sees it and he goes, yeah, it's cool, and that was it. And I was like, man, this guy's a jerk. Like exactly, I was like, everyone talks about him being such a good guy. Well, then as happenstance, I've actually gotten to know Don personally and had many conversations with him, and he is not a jerk. He's a very good guy. He's a great guy in this hobby. He's super supportive. And I was like, man, I guess I misread him wrong. Well, I'm not going to mention who, but let's just say a little leprechaun told him, hey, you know, Drew thought you were a jerk at first. And Don calls me and he's like, hey, man, Jake, I mean, the leprechaun, you know, said this. It's kind of funny. It's just a joke now, but that's kind of a funny story as far as a YouTuber that I thought was kind of a jerk, and turns out I was completely wrong. So
I mean, some people are just men of few words. So
apparently so, yeah. And I'm not one of them, obviously. So
yeah, clearly,
you're,
so
you're three questions in, and we're at 45 minutes. So no, I'm just kidding.
but I mean, I definitely have had the same experience as far as everybody just being welcoming. I mean, myself being so new to vintage, and still I'm just still accepted by these people who've been doing it 30 plus years.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Hmm.
you know, everybody's still super nice. They're, you know, they're just they're happy that you're getting into the same thing they love. So
Exactly. Well, we were all new at it at one point, and somebody hopefully helped us along. So want to do the same for others.
yeah, and it's been great. So uh I guess well, before we get into my 10 random questions, I did want to give a plug. Drew's got a VR going right now. If you
Hmm.
haven't done it yet, 200 subscribers. Of
Hmm.
course, you know, now you're up to what, 270 almost?
Almost like 264 or something. I don't know. So
I watched your 50 VR, and you got over 100 during the course of
yeah, that
that one.
one. Yeah, yeah.
Apparently, if you
So
want a big subscriber boost, you do a contest.
yeah, you got to give something away. So um,
But
no,
if you haven't done
I've been
the video
overwhelmed.
yet,
So
you know, check that out. So
yeah, yeah. They're due Friday the 31st.
yeah, a week from today.
So
Well, at least the day we're recording
the day
this.
we're recording, yeah. So, but yeah, I've gotten a lot more than I thought, and from a lot of channels I've never heard of. So it's been really great. You know, guys, there was one person who said, "Hey, I just started making videos. I think my VR was his second video," and I appreciate the fact that someone would do that. You know, so yeah, go ahead and get it in. It's not about the fun. It's just support and learning, meet new people, and all that. So yeah.
Oh, personally, I thought it was an awesome subject because I feel like I personally learned, more about all the World Series victories of everyone on my wall because I had to find, who didn't win one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and there's been some great players that are mentioned, guys I hadn't thought of, or guys that oh man, I guess I never did win. So yeah.
and I in the comments I ended up on mine where I had Don Sutton with 5-time World Series loser. I ended up looking a little further, and he is like Mr. Hard Luck because the Dodgers won the year before his rookie year. They won the World Series.
Hmm.
They won the year after he left the team to
Yeah.
Houston in 81. And then he signed his last contract with them at 43, retired midseason, and that was 1988.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Just missed it.
yeah.
Yeah, the one person that's gotten mentioned a few times is Tommy John, because Tommy John was on the Dodgers in 1977 and 78 and lost to the Yankees. And then he ended up signing and playing on the Yankees, and he lost to the Dodgers in 1981. So that's kind of funny to me. So,
Yeah.
um,
But I mean, his career was bookended by victories
yeah, yeah,
there with Sutton. And then the final capper, the cherry on the top, the Kirk Gibson year.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I forget who said it, but you just can't help when you were born and played. Some guys just missed the era of their team being great or not great. So,
Oh, yeah.
um,
But yeah, it was fun to learn, about all the different World Series victories because a few guys I didn't realize they had one, and then I found out they did. So,
mhm.
but moving on. Sorry.
Okay, you're
So
good.
10 random questions.
All
Drew,
right, here we
number
go.
1. What is your earliest memory?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the earliest memory it sticks in my brain is my mom handing me to another person over one of those half doors at church to go into nursery. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. And I remember asking my mom when I was a kid about this and described what the room and the thing. And it would have had to been when I lived in Massachusetts, and I moved from Massachusetts when I was 2. So it had to be under 2, which is really weird to think that I would have some memory from being 2 years old, but apparently I do. Now, it's not much more than that, just my mom handing me to somebody else, but that's my earliest memory. Didn't see that question coming, so there you go.
Oh, that feels crazy. Because I think mine is 3 or 4. Because
Yeah.
But so number 2, who is the most famous person you've encountered in real life?
Most famous person I've encountered in real life. So actually spoken with, is that what you're saying?
Or walked past them at least, or
I was stuck. I was stuck in an airport one time in Cleveland, and being in Cleveland is not great. Sorry, Scott. Being in an airport is really not great, and being stuck in an airport is the worst. But I was stuck in an airport in Cleveland, and I was with a friend of mine, and we were trying to figure out how to get out because we were trying to get to Pittsburgh actually. And I turned around, and Joe Namath walked by me. So that's the closest I've been to somebody. I didn't speak to him because it took me a second. Like, I know him. Oh, I know him, but he was on his way. So apparently he was not stuck in Cleveland, or he was trying to get out real quick. But he was walking pretty quick. But there's one. So
well, cool. Number 3, do you have a favorite song?
yeah, Jesus Freak by DC Talk. Not even a question. And for most of the viewers, probably have no idea who they are. Look it up. It was a Christian band in the 90s, and Jesus Freak was their biggest song, and just phenomenal song. So
Now, what did you say the band name then?
DC Talk, as in like
Oh,
Washington DC, and talk. So
okay. Because for a second there, I thought you were saying ZZ Top. So
no,
that
not
makes
ZZ
it
Top. I
hard.
do remember them, but they did not sing about Jesus. So no,
Because then the comment about not nobody knowing them didn't make sense then.
no,
So
no. DC Talk. I'm sorry.
okay, no worries. Number 4. What was your favorite Halloween costume ever?
Oh gosh. Uh, um, I don't know. We had to get very creative with costumes. Again, we came from pretty little means. So I'll tell you one thing I did. I was probably in middle school. Was I put on like a soccer like shorts and a shirt and carried a soccer ball and went as a soccer player and went back home and changed and put something else on and went back out. And the third time around, I did it again and put something else on. Just trying to make it up to get as much candy. And people were like, "Hey, weren't you here before?" And I was like, "No, it wasn't me," And it wasn't a very big community, so they weren't as stupid as I was hoping. But so there's my Halloween story. So maybe one of those three because I got an extra Snicker bar, but I don't know about a favorite costume. So
Okay. Uh, Number 5. Do you have a favorite animal?
my favorite animal. I think like birds of prey are just beautiful to watch. So falcons, hawks, eagles, owls, just the way that they fly and soar. Flight to me is the ultimate thing. I don't know if on your list it's what's my superpower. If it's not, it doesn't matter. It would be flying. So the fact that they look so effortless when they fly is just incredible to me, and their eyesight, just so much about them. So probably a bird of prey. So
Yeah, one thing I was fascinated with those was the like a kid space science museum I went to as a kid had
hmm
a thing where they had the pile of like stuffed things that represented like how much one of those things eats in a year.
oh yeah,
And it was this massive pile that went all the way to the really high ceiling because they have to eat so much because they consume so much energy flying.
sure.
They eat so many times their own body weight even every
hmm
day. So
Yeah, that's how I justify my eating habits. So I want to fly, so I eat my body weight. I'm just kidding.
there you go. uh, Number 6, if you had the ability to switch lives for a single day with anyone, could be anyone in history even, who would it be? Who would you want to
Switch
experience
lives with.
what they did?
Uh, so can I pick the day or just
Sure.
the person? Okay, I think and oh, I think I would switch with the Apostle Peter on the day that Jesus was crucified because of everything that he went through and witnessing what he witnessed. So, for those who aren't Bibles, historians or people of it, they may not understand. I would encourage you to go read about it, but I think I would pick the Apostle Peter, the day that the 24 hours preceding and leading up to Jesus' crucifixion.
Okay.
So,
Number 7. What's your favorite movie?
uh, I'm going to go with now. This is not one I sit and watch constantly anymore, but I'm going to go with The Princess Bride. And because now when I look at it, it's so cheesy and corny, but it's so great. And I can watch it with my kids, with my youngest daughter, and I don't have to worry about, oh, forget this part or that part. Uh, and there are a lot of, and I'm not picking on anything from the 80s. I grew up in the 80s, but there's a lot of movies in the 80s you remember as great. And then you might watch it with your kid and you're like, oh, I forgot about that. I don't know. Princess Bride to me is just a great movie that's nonsense. And so I'm going to go with that.
That's a great
But
choice.
thank you. I don't know. Either that or Shawshank Redemption, which I'm not going to watch with my kids. So that's an amazing movie too. So
Oh yeah, that's another one on my list of if it's on and I flip the channel there, I'm gonna waste whatever time is left
exactly,
in that movie sitting there watching it. So,
exactly. Yep.
um, but All right, number 8. What was your favorite subject in school?
History, not even close. Love it, still love it. Mainly U.S. history, but world history. Uh, just the we talk about what you learn from your mistakes or whatever, and just it's amazing watching the human race and how it's developed and what it's gone through. It's why I got into baseball history so much because it mirrors U.S. history almost step for step since baseball's inception. So,
That's a great subject. I mean, that's I recently hinted at a history-based project I have going on in cardboard. What was that for Shane's VR? So,
mhm.
but yeah. Uh, Number 9. What is your favorite condiment?
uh, I'm gonna go barbecue sauce. There's enough variety of it, and you could put it on almost anything. So, we'll say barbecue sauce.
That'll work. Number 10. Uh, who was the biggest influence in your life? Why?
Who's the biggest influence in my life? Um, I don't know. Probably overall, I guess my dad. Um, but the older I get, the more I realized how much my mom influenced me just in a quiet way. My mom passed away in 2008, and the older you get, you realize, oh man, that's what she was. She was leading me here or there. So I would say my parents. I'm just going to cheat and say both of them. So, um, and they've been there from since day one. So
Well, that's really supposed to be everybody's answer, right?
yeah, yeah, I guess so. So
Hopefully, as long as you got two good ones.
yeah, yeah, and I did. I do. So
Well, great. That was my questions. Before we go, any parting message or anything you had in front of you we didn't show yet?
um, not really. I mean, I grabbed you, let me see. I grabbed my Carl Erskine stuff down, my cards, because I knew we were going to talk about him a bit, but I didn't know what we'd show. But let's see. I'll go with two my two oddball, if you want to call them that, Carl Erskine cards. Why they're so great, and we talked about this in a not you and I, but I was on um, a live with Alex Bowman 53 and talked about these two cards. But there is my example of the Red Heart and the Wilson Franks, if I can get them both in there without the glare. And what I like about both of these
Yeah.
cards is they're great pictures of him, almost identical pictures. The Red Heart, he's got the baseball in his hand. But the background, just a solid background, the red or the blue, they just look fantastic. It's got the B on his hat, the Dodgers on his uniform. To me, these just scream vintage '50s baseball cards, even though they weren't made by Topps or Bowman, and both have great backs. So I'll show the backs for a second. There's the Red Heart. I'm trying to do it upside down here.
Yeah, I mean they're both really amazing cards for a.
Yeah, I just love them. And I would encourage anybody. I guess my parting words are: I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I love vintage, but I can't get into it. It's too expensive or whatever." Find yourself a vintage card. Get a player. It doesn't have to be like the Clemente we talked about, or you with your, all your amazing Willie Mays. You can get a player, find out about him, read about him. I mean, a lot of people know who Erskine is, but the more I looked into him, the more connected I felt to him. And you can get vintage cards for not a lot of money. You can get low grade vintage cards for almost no money.
Oh yeah.
And just go out and do it and start finding some. If you want graded, great. If you want them raw, great. If you want, pick out where your parameters are and find some stuff. But just get in there and do it. And And then the same thing with YouTube. A lot of people say, "Oh, I can't get in front of a camera or whatever." Just start recording something and stick it out there. It's not about the views. It's not about your subscribers. It's not about anything. It's about the relationships you build and just telling your story. So there's my encouragement to people: is go buy a vintage card, and get on YouTube and talk about it a little bit and just have a lot of fun, because it's totally changed the way I hobby right now. YouTube has.
Oh
So
yeah,
there you go.
I echo exactly what you're saying. I mean, so many of the items that are filling my cases are $20 or less,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
there's so much out there. If you avoid, the rookies, those get really pricey.
Sure,
Or
sure.
a few of those inner circle guys, you gotta really hunt for bargain opportunities. But
There you go.
um, but as far as the YouTube goes, basically, if you love something and that love pours out onto the camera, people are going to watch. So, um, but yeah, that's great to talk to you, Drew. And
Yeah, absolutely.
thanks everybody for watching. I guess a quick announcement. I've got a bunch of these things here. If you've made it this far in my video, you might actually, like watching my stuff. If anyone's interested, all you have to do is send me an email and I will send you a card of my channel. If
There you
you're
go.
already on my mailing list, you're going to get one already eventually. But anybody interested, send me an email and I'll send you one in the mail.
There you go. Well, since you're dropping an Easter egg at the end, there's something I want to announce that I've never talked about on my channel. If anybody has listened this far, I just want to see if anyone comments. But except for one, every video I do, I sit right here with this wall. And I just want to tell you, and everybody who's watching now after an hour, every single video, I change something on this wall. And nobody has ever commented in the 60 something videos that there's always something different. So I just want to see how many people start noticing, hey, wait a minute, that thing was facing the other way, or that ball was facing a different thing or something. So there's a little secret into my channel that nobody's known about except for friends I've told. But so there you go. So see
Well,
how
you're
many
so
people.
engaging with your stories that no one notices. So,
Yeah, either that or they're like skipping by, the 10 second, and they don't notice. Uh, but yeah, I just want to see how many people start commenting. Wait a minute, those are in a different order. So, but yeah, there's always something different behind me. I don't know
well,
why I'm doing it. I guess it's just stupid fun. So why not? So
well, I'll keep my eye out from this
there
point
you
forward.
go. Now you'll know, and I'll start getting the comments coming in saying like, wait a minute. So I got to get more sneaky, I suppose.
All right. Well, thanks again, Drew. Thanks
Absolutely.
everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.
All right. Thanks a lot, John.